Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you to Capital Link for inviting us to speak about the gas market. My name is David Barrow. I'm the Senior Vice President for Bureau Veritas, looking after our operations in Europe and North and South America. So I'm joined by an esteemed gas panel, far much experienced than I am. All I can say is I'm a master mariner. My favourite ships were LPGs and LNGs. So you have all my sympathies there for me. So on the panelists, we have Mr. Kristian Sorensen, BW CEO, BWLPG. We have Brian Gallagher, who's the Executive Vice President, Capital Clean Energy Carriers Corp. We've got Mr. Eduardo Maranhao, the Golar LNG, the CFO. We've got Mads Peter Zacho, CEO, Navigator Gas. Mr. Carl-Johan Hagman, the President and CEO of NYK Group Europe. So a real set of expertise. So we'll see how we go. But let me just set the scene just slightly before we start. I think as an industry, we remain extremely challenged, really challenged. Not only the decarbonisation, and I think that's becoming more and more relevant as we head towards 2050, but I think more importantly, as we head towards October for the next IMO sessions, which are going to be absolutely crucial for absolute sure. So we've got the carbon reduction targets, but we've also got data and digital. We've got AI. I've been to a number of sessions this week already where people have talked about AI, and do we understand the power of AI? Can we understand it? I think at Fast Stream this morning, there was some information, some data saying 10% of senior executives only understand AI. So that's going to be very interesting as we go forward. Now, as an industry, can we move forward quick enough? I'm sure you'll all agree as an industry, we are moving quicker for absolute sure, but I believe we need to move quicker. And we can only move quicker in working in collaboration. Not one company can achieve it. So I urge you all, or us all as an industry, to work in collaboration. Certainly we've seen a greater sense of urgency in the decarbonisation stage, for absolute sure. The various mixes of fuels, we've got the various spats going on now leading up to the IMO sessions in October on MEPC. And everyone is watching that very, very carefully and different views on that. So we're going to have to watch that very carefully as well. So that's looming. I think the sense of urgency as well is dawning on us. And I think there's more areas coming into the mix. Just as we were waiting down here at the panel, we briefly talked about, shall we talk about nuclear today? Well, not. We're going to talk about the gas sector. But certainly nuclear is being talked about more and more. And certainly Bureau Veritas think it is a way forward. We're a resilient industry. If you look back to COVID, we were very resilient and we pulled through for absolute sure. We continue to have disruptions, the geopolitics, but we continue to pull through. There's been some great shipping markets. So we've done very well as an industry. Unfortunately, our flag is only raised to the general public when something goes wrong. It's never when we're doing a good job. So we have to be aware, we have to raise the awareness for absolute sure. As I mentioned before, technology is having a real effect on us, and we have to move forward and keep pace, not only the gas sector, but all different sectors as well. I'm just going back to the gas sector. When I joined my first LPG ship, it was from a very old, dirty old chemical tanker with all the old wheels, and I was amazed then, pushing buttons to open valves. You know, so we made good progress then, and we'll continue to make progress as well. Certainly part of the success is the training of crew and the attraction of people to our industry. And I believe it's everyone's responsibility in the industry, in this room. You all have a responsibility to attract new talent into marine industry. What an exciting time. Decarbonisation, data, digital, use of NI. We probably need a different skill set, but let's bring those people in and retain them as well. I'm sure you'll all agree, no matter what sector you're working in, one of your biggest challenges is recruitment of good, talented people. So, let's turn to our esteemed panel. So my first question to Kristian. In the markets you operate in, has there been any fundamentals in the underlying fundamentals over the last few years? We've seen lots of issues coming up. How do you see it?
Well, in the LPG market, the main driver fundamentally for us has been the shale gas and shale oil revolution in the States in particular, which has produced an abundance of LPG for exports from the States, and we have a very particular dislocation between production of LPG in the US and the consuming markets in Asia, which is has created a very shipping-intensive commodity trade. So in that sense, we have over the last, I would say, 6, 7, 8 years enjoyed a fairly strong market historically on the back of that, and it's even today, it's day rates in the mid $70,000 per day against cash break even of $20,000-$25,000. So it's been a fantastic ride in that sense. But it's driven by the shale gas revolution primarily in the States.
Okay, and obviously BW have invested heavily in the dual fuel for LPG. Are you seeing a pickup there across other sectors on LPG as a dual fuel?
Yeah, we've been quite fortunate in our segment because the dual fuel technology, which was, I think, developed 6, 7, 8 years ago and pioneered by certain companies, including ourselves, has proven to be very successful in reducing the carbon footprint by about 20% compared to burning compliant fuel. And it's been adopted and embraced by the whole industry, I would say. So if you look at the order book today, not only VLGCs, but also further down in sizes, the technology has proven to be a success. And it's the best we have at the moment. It doesn't bring us to zero, but it brings us at least a big step in the right direction.
Okay, great, okay, interesting. Some exciting times, that's for sure. So Brian, just sort of leading on from that, from your aspect, what do you see as the market trends going forward towards 2030, 2050, specifically in the gas sector? And what's the investment outlook for the LNG sector?
Yeah, good question. In terms of, maybe people don't know who we are, we're Capital Clean Energy Carriers. We've come out of what was Capital Product Partners. So we sort of focused the business in November 2023. We have 12 LNG ships on the water. We've got 6 more to come. That'll make us the biggest quoted LNG play in the world. We've also got 10 ships coming starting in January, which are very focused on the energy transition. They'll be shipping ultimately ammonia, but in particular also we've got 4 ships which will be doing liquid CO2. But in direct answer to your question, in terms of the trends we're seeing, we believe continue to see very positive trends. And those trends have really accelerated in particular with the new administration in the US. If we take one of the agencies, the Gas Exporting Forum, they're talking about $11 trillion will need to be invested in gas between now and 2050. And that's basically gas is going to take a bigger share of the energy pie. I think we've all seen the charts with regard to AI and the energy needs that we're going to be needing out there. The same agency is sort of forecasting global energy demand is going to have to rise by 18% every year up to 2050, and gas is going to have to take 32% of that. So it's very, very positive. We've seen almost quite a record first half for LNG production, announcements of just under 50 million tonnes in the first half of 2025. And again, that's a direct result of the Trump administration. So we see very strong growth, but we also see even stronger growth with the LNG shipping angle because most of that production is going to have to be shipped. And the multiplier is pretty well proven, about 1.5 for every million tonnes of LNG production. You're going to need to ship that, so you need 1.5 ships for every million tonnes. And obviously the production growth is coming in particular from the States. So we're very, very pleased with our positioning. We're very, very focused and very, very happy with the LNG positioning, as I'm sure we'll come to later. The energy transition has got some sort of breaks and some elements around it, not from the companies, but from maybe the regulatory and political environments behind it. But underlying LNG looks very well fair set in terms of our positioning, and in particular has been given a boost by the new administration over the last 6 months.
What's your view on the order book? We've had the explosion of orders from Qatargas. When I was in Singapore, I came back from Singapore this time last year. At the time, I was very much involved with Total, Mozambique LNG, where there were 17 vessels put on hold. Apparently, they're still on hold, but they're obviously going to have to renegotiate the price with the yards if they execute those contracts. But it's a pretty full order book, right, for LNG vessels, and the price is still what, 250 plus?
250? Yeah, it is. It's a very fair point. I think sometimes there's a lot of focus on this, and I've come from the tanker world where the dynamics are very more live. But the order book fleet ratio is at a 3-year low. It doesn't feel like that. It's still really elevated at 42%. Yeah. But you're also talking about the new technologies that are coming. People want new ships. And I think it's important to see, if we look at the growth to 2030, with the numbers I just spoke about, with about, say, 350 million tonnes of new LNG production, you put the shipping multiplier on that, you're going to need somewhere about sort of 500 ships. There's roughly 300 ships being built. Yeah. And on top of that, you've got the actual fleet today. We're seeing scrapping. We're seeing another ship scrapped last week. Once it's only 12, we're getting record ships being scrapped, and that steam technology is being very much driven out. And there's a real cost, $5, $10, $12 million to get a steamship back from a cold layup in particular. So whilst we have got part of that order book, I mentioned we've got 6 of those ships, so of course you would expect us to be upbeat on that, but it doesn't give us any sleepless nights. The prices are holding, and as you said yourself, the shipyard capacity is very constrained. I think on the panel before last they were making that point. The yards are very busy, and they make most money on LNG vessels in terms of their margins. So we think there's a very, very strong dynamic there, which whilst the numbers look on the face of it elevated, we've got to look at the underlying fleet and that fleet replacement. You take those ships out, the order book and adjust for that on that basis looks much more in line with a lot of the other sectors.
Okay, great, thank you. Just turning our attention a bit more towards Asia now for Carl from NYK. Carl, when I was in Singapore, I spent nearly 7 years in Singapore, came back last year. It was very much the Japanese driving ammonia, for driving. You know, ammonia's fuel, which was going to, fuel a huge burst of construction of ammonia carriers, very large ammonia carriers. That started to wane a bit, then the methanol thing came in. Today, from NYK's sort of aspect, Japan, Asia, what's the energy mix? How are you seeing it going forward?
Well, thank you. Well, so I think it has to sort of be contextualized in the sense that Japan is, depending on your account, and I don't want to step any Germans on their toes, I think we're still the world's 3rd largest economy. We're an island, but more importantly, we import well north of 90% of our energy. So sort of how do you just get that to work? And of course, after the Fukushima incident, today we have 6 nuclear power plants running out of the 20 or the 33 facilities that was once there. There's no doubt that there is political pressure on Russian gas imports. And how do you square that equation? And therefore, I think when we look at challenges in Europe and many other places in the world, it's sort of, you need to understand that Japan is in a pretty rough neighborhood, and therefore you have to sort of make do with what you can. Okay. I think the big one, if we're looking at short-term trends, is for those of you who were at Gastech in Milan last week. I wasn't there myself, but the reports back was sort of hallelujah. Now LNG is back for real, and I think that's one takeaway that sitting in Europe and with the taxonomy back and forth, that here is where we have infrastructure and here is where we can get volume. We have been engaged in a number of test shipments of hydrogen, and that is very difficult, and it's very, very, very expensive. And therefore, how do you create alternatives? Now, we think one alternative, or one of the few fuels that you can actually run Japan or any coal power plants is ammonia, and from the experiences of LNG, where you actually burn the fuel that you carry, that ammonia carriers actually can burn ammonia, we think is one of many pathways, and we're experimenting with several. But since 18 months back, we're running this one tugboat operationally in Tokyo Bay, and many people in Europe are very skeptical of that, but there are 40 million people living in Tokyo, the Tokyo Bay area, and so far, at least, I think we've been confident that we're developing protocols so that can be one avenue. It will by far not be probably the main avenue, but again, beggars are not choosers, and I think we are now in a situation where Japan emits about the same amount of CO2 as the total shipping industry does, 1 billion tons per year, and how do you address that? And currently, even though gas is fossil, it looks to be the one of the very important pathways, and therefore I think LNG, as a fuel for vessels, but even more importantly, as we just heard, as an energy source to be carried, we think is going to continue to be very important.
No, thanks. I had some good comments there, for absolutely sure. I was at Gastech for a couple of days last week, and certainly LNG was that, it's back, it's here, and then we start seeing these spats going on. So Eduardo, talking turn to LNG for you. Do you see that as is it a stepping stone? Is it an alternative? Is it a stepping stone to methane, LNG, ethane? What other alternatives do you believe there are from your aspect?
Well, thanks for the question, David, and Nicholas, thanks for inviting us again here to be here today. So we really see LNG as really the fuel that will be chosen in the future. I think we see more and more the abundance of supply coming to market, and I think going to what we do in Golar and really our technology of FLNGs allows markets which would be currently stranded to access the global LNG market, and therefore unlocking significant volumes into that space. We see that our ability to quickly and in a modular way develop significantly volumes of LNG and bring them very quickly to market will be a very useful tool going forward. I think the adoption and the level of interest that we see today from various countries, and most of these countries are emerging markets, be it in Latin America or in West Africa or in other regions, is increasingly becoming more popular. And I think the fact that when we look back nowadays, we have a very robust track record of operations from our first FLNG, which has been running for over 7 years now, very successfully. And I think this is a proven technology that is here to stay. Sure. I see it.
Okay, challenging times ahead, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely challenging times ahead. So I think we just had the last panel, the dry bulk one. They were talking about the USTR, which is going on force on the 14th of October. There's a few thoughts coming out there from the dry bulk aspect. So let's go to the experienced panel in the gas sector, and let's talk about that. What are the implications? How's it going to affect your business? What are you going to do? Kristian, over to you first, and we'll go along the panel to do it.
So what we see happening at the moment in preparation for the 14th of October is that Chinese owned and operated VLGCs, because VLGCs are generally not hit by the USTR because we arrive in ballast. But the Chinese controlled part of the global fleet, which is about 52, 53 ships out of 411 on the water, they are basically forced out of the US Gulf trade. So what we see at the moment is that the freight rates in the Gulf, like also described by, I think, Peter Wernick in the last panel, you can see that the Atlantic Basin and the US Gulf rates are moving up. And then we do see some pressure on the Middle East rate environment. But I think this is another set of inefficiency brought into the market by geopolitics. So overall, I think inefficiencies tend to be good for rates, at least in shipping. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Brian, from your aspect, same question.
We have 12 LNGs on the water and 6 to come, and they're all built in South Korea, so there's an exemption there.
Okay. I think we had the same before on the Bulgarian one, right? All the vessels were built in Japan. So, good position then as well. Eduardo, any thoughts from your aspect?
Well, I think I just would like to go back to one point, which is really the gas demand driving the increasing demand for FLNGs. I think we see more and more new markets and new countries willing and wishing to enter the global LNG space. So again, our FLNG technology really enables these markets to in a quickly and a very cost-efficient way to bring that LNG volumes into market. So I think that's
great. Matt?
When it comes to, you could say, the USTR, it doesn't affect us in any way. We are exporting product out of the US, and that means that our vessels would not be subject to any port fees. So I think I see a lot of, you talked a lot about the challenges and so on. I see a lot of opportunities. And Was also very inspired by Mr. Dominguez, who talked as if he was in implementation mode on the net zero framework and seemed not very worried about whether it would be adopted or not in October. So that was amazing, great news. And for Navigator gas, I mean, we have an abundance of opportunities in ammonia, later CO2, and other products that will be transported on our ships once that's implemented.
Okay, right. Carl.
No, well, you started off your talk saying that we are sort of in very uncertain and challenging times. Well, I would argue shipping has been that for the last couple of 100 years. So,
yeah, it
so
just
I
keeps
mean,
on coming, right?
if it is USTR or if it's the net zero framework or it's anything else, I think we find ourselves to be a very, very resilient industry. I mean, we'll continue shipping things. I'm not sure all shipping companies will survive that, but and therefore sort of a couple of things common. So one, on a previous panel, size matters, to be able to have the flexibility to move things around. I think the uncertainty of US policy is actually quite scary. We take a lot of heart in the fact that these Annex 3 and Annex 4 exemptions, I mean, if car carriers and LNG vessels are taken out, of course, that's... But the big one then coming back to is really the IMO decision on October 17th. Yeah. I think for us, that's really the big one, is there we are potentially challenging the whole global trading system. And let's just hope that Secretary General Dominguez's optimism is well-founded, because I think that's the one to keep an eye on, because that's systemic.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's a real key point going forward, right? Do we reset or do we look at a different paths forward? So it's going to be key, and I think everybody's going to be watching that really, really closely. Great, thank you. So another question, please, to Mads. Mads, how exposed is the existing fleet to upcoming legislation? You know, as well as the challenge, I always think that as regards legislation, we're on a spinning log, right? Because we keep on spinning around, we get over one new set of regulations, and the next one's coming around. For the existing fleet, you know, how are you dealing with it, Navigator, and how do you mitigate those risks?
No, I think it's great. I appreciate the regulation that's kicking in, particularly when it comes to decarbonization, because I think we in the gas tanker segment probably have the biggest opportunities of any in that transition that's going to come from it. We just ordered ammonia-propelled ammonia carriers in expectation for the legislation coming into place, and before that we ordered ethane vessels as well, flexible, retrofittable into ammonia and carbon capture. So I think it's really about making sure that whatever actions you're taking, you're building in the flexibility so you can react and take those opportunities that may be coming. So, and I think on energy efficiency, there's a lot to be done, and we're investing into it. It's probably the best money we can invest because the payback is relatively quick. So I think great opportunities, and I think it'll be a real strength to our bottom line to see that regulation kicking in.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've helped a number of owners and operators on the day-to-day efficiencies, and as you say, you're gaining huge savings and reduction of emissions. You know, so we're encouraging all of our owners to take the same path. Kristian, just from your aspect as well, you know, existing ships. How do you mitigate the risks? How are you keeping up with that continual process of new stuff coming in?
As mentioned, we have invested and we believe in the LPG dual fuel technology, at least for the next 10 years. It should be moving us in the right direction in terms of emissions and so on. I think for the LPG, just like Mats described, you know, for the LPG industry, we are quite fortunate because we have for 5 decades already carried ammonia as a cargo. Yeah. So you have that very short gap to bridge in terms of technology for carrying ammonia and also using ammonia as a fuel if that technology proves to be commercialized and safe and so on in the future. And then secondly, we are also monitoring the carbon capture technology, which some of our competitors have started to explore. Okay. I mean, both ammonia and CO2 carbon capture has its let's say challenges in terms of getting rid of the stuff or pricing and safety issues and so on. But we follow the ammonia propulsion technology, and carbon capture on board vessels as two technologies we believe can be scalable, because that's important for us.
Yeah, the carbon capture, I had an interesting meeting last week, an overview of the Northern Lights project, which for me is really interesting, you know, particularly how they're storing that carbon, right? And my question is a limitation, you know, and how long is it good for, or are there any long-term effects on that carbon being stored right down there?
Yeah, you definitely need some investments in the infrastructure onshore to make that kind of a solution commercialized. So,
yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. So there's been a few discussions on the dark fleet, on the patterns of the dark fleet. I mean, generally, if the sanctions are lifted, what's the impact on that dark fleet? And has the dark fleet affected any of your businesses at all as we're going forward? So we'll start at the other end with Carl-Johan on that one, please.
Okay, then I think, again, the dark fleet actually poses a systemic threat. As long as shipping is 73% of the world is water. We have one system, it's IMO, and as long as we have a level playing field within that system, I think it actually works fine. May the best man win, and we compete on business models and other things. But it's one system, and I think if the dark fleet continues to expand and grow the way it does, it is actually an alternative system. And I think that would be very unfortunate for our industry, because right now it's ensuring that, well, there's so many other challenges to this system, not least October 17th, that this is the last thing we need, and therefore that this does not institutionalize itself for too long, and some of us hope and pray that sanctions will be lifted because wars will be ended, and thereby we can reaffirm the fact that we actually have one global system. And I think the industry needs to rally around that, because I think that's the bigger challenge, actually.
Absolutely. You know, and as I mentioned earlier, you know, our industry only goes into the news when there's an incident. And the general public don't really understand the shadow fleet at all. They just think, oh, it's that dirty, polluting industry again, isn't it? They're up to their old trick. So, really good points. Mads, thoughts on that one, please, on the dark fleet?
No, it doesn't impact us very much. I mean, the majority of our loadings are taking place in North America, in the US, and transporting to Asia and to Europe. So we don't compete much with the dark fleet at all.
Okay. Eduardo?
Well, I would say that the dark fleet issue is also not impacting directly our business. Okay. We do operate on fixed terminals, and the cargo management is usually taken care by the charters in that case.
Excellent. Okay. Kristian?
Yeah, for the VLGC space, it's very similar to what you see in tankers. So it's a fairly big fleet trading on Iran, which is 10-12% of the sailing fleet, actually. And of course, that represents, like you described, a big issue in terms of safety, compliance, and we do hope that at one point, you know, that problem can be solved.
Okay.
So it's very similar to what we see in the big tanker sector.
Okay. Brian?
It's limited, as the others have said, but we've got to be careful, I think, on LNG, because we're having a bit of a real-life example of what we've seen elsewhere. In tankers that I saw personally up close, sort of 2014-15, where you've had 4 ships go from Russia to China. Right. And obviously had the same 4 ships go around last year and couldn't find a home. They found a home this time round. So we shouldn't be complacent just because LNG doesn't seem to have much of an issue. These issues can raise, as we've seen, and as Kristian's alluded to there, these percentages can grow very quickly. Okay. So no, I agree with everything the panelists have said. We need to get a resolution to this. And if the sanctions are actually sort of properly penalised, that's one start.
No, absolutely, it is.
Can I just add on the dark fleet, because I think it is. I think it's solvable within the framework of the existing system that we have. Yeah. And that means that both flag states and port states need to uphold the protocols that IMO have established. And if that is the case, and it is not an environmental hazard, then I think that there's a slightly different conversation. So I come from the southern part of Sweden, and I've the whole summer, the short summer vacation I have, 2 vessels a day pass in a sound that is 3.2 kilometers wide. And of course, you are quite anxious as just a citizen that you actually have insurance coverage, not only for somebody paying, but actually dealing with what happened. And currently, there's actually a vessel aground in Öresund right now, on the little waterway between Denmark and Sweden, where 40% of the Russian oil passes. So I think it's also from a local taxpayer citizen point of view quite important that the global systems we have are robust for situations like using trade as sanctions, which is, an odd
Absolutely. You mentioned port state control and flag having class sizes as well. At Veritas, we've withdrawn the class of any vessel that's suspected of being in the dark fleet. And a number of other class societies, ARCS members have. Some haven't. Some have taken those ships with open arms. I won't say who they are, but they've taken them with open arms. And for me, that's just not acceptable at all. We're all in this together. We're all here to protect our reputation, right? For absolute sure. So, esteemed panel, our time is nearly up. That 40 minutes went really quick. Thank you for your inputs. I hope the inputs were great for the audience. So a big thank you to the audience for taking the time to listen to us today. And then just that final reminder, I think the biggest thing on our radar at the moment is in October at IMO, for absolute sure. We'll be watching that and supporting as necessary. And also your individual responsibility to attract people to our industry. Young talent, let's attract them and let's keep them and maintain them in our industry. Because generally when you join the industry, you never leave, right? So if we can get the people in, then they'll never leave. So, we're out on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.